New Zealand Taxidermy, setting up for a photo shoot, a 2-day photo shoot. I've just been setting up the lights and testing them. I've got 3 lights. One is a background light up in that far corner, and that's to provide the animals with a rim light. And what I'm actually trying to do is replicate really beautiful natural lighting that you might see in the wilderness, where it's a fairly overcast day, so I want the animal lit quite flat, even lighting, so it really brings out the detail, and then also as though the sun was behind the animal, providing a lovely rim light. So the lighting would be the same as if you had exceptional outdoor lighting, but in this case I can control it. I've got 2 lights here to provide enough soft fill light for the front of the animal. With the lights I'm using large soft boxes, especially for the fill light. So this light here is a large umbrella softbox, collapsible, so I can take it traveling, and that's going to be the main fill light to give me the even lighting. And the other light here is really to provide a bit more emphasis from one direction, as though the light was bouncing off a cloud or something. It just makes the light a little bit more interesting, and it can also help fill out the lighting on the animal from the front side. So that's why I've got these 2 lights. These lights that I'm using too are very handy in that they're battery powered, so I don't have cords running everywhere. They're quite powerful, and they do special things like synchronize at high speeds, but I don't need to use that today.
Although I am trying to simulate light that you could find in a natural environment, it is reasonably complex in that there's a light from behind the rim light, which is simulating the sun, and then a fill light in front, which could simulate clouds on a cloudy day, bouncing a bit of light in, and then the key light could be, for example, reflecting off a snow or an ice wall, which you could find in an alpine environment. So although you could get this lighting in a natural scene, it is reasonably complex, but still believable, and because I can control the lighting, my aim is to make it as dramatic as possible on the animal. So one technique I've used quite a bit in this shoot is a technique called feathering, and it's to avoid getting hot spots from either the key light or the fill light, where the subject is so large that something like the antlers, for example, gets a bit of a hot spot or a brighter area where it's particularly close to the light. But by angling the light away, you can get an effect called feathering that just lets the light bleed off and avoid the hot spots where you don't want them. On both the key light and the rim light, I'm using a device called a grid, which helps focus the light. And the reason I'm using that is I don't want light bouncing all around the room and kind of filling out all the shadows. I want to be able to control the light. Another important piece of equipment in this lighting setup is a GOBO, which is short for go-between, and it's simply blocking light from the rim light, which would otherwise hit the lens and cause lens flare, as you can see in this example where we forgot to put the GOBO in. And if you've got lens flare, you have to try and deal with it in post-production, and it can, when it gets really bad, soften the whole image. One reason for using flashes rather than continuous light for a project like this is because the lights are so powerful, we can still work in normal daylight conditions, but the flashes will overpower the existing room light, so we don't have to worry about the room light. And I normally test for this by just turning the flash off and triggering the camera and seeing if I've got a reasonably black exposure. If I haven't, I know I'm picking up some room light, and I'll need to either turn up the power of the flashes or increase my shutter speed or do something to lower the effect of the room lights. One feature of these particular lights, and the reason I bought these powerful ones, is that they are bright enough to overpower the sun outside, so I can use them in a outdoors environment and still overpower the sun to give a really nice exposure. So if you are looking at buying into a flash system, just make sure that if you want to use them outdoors, and I have often done that, that they're powerful enough to overpower on a bright sunny day. So to sum up, this was a really enjoyable shoot, and I've done a number of shoots like this, so I have learned a bit about studio lighting. And I will say that even if you're not interested in studio photography, there's a real advantage to learning some of these classic lighting setups, because they just look really good. And if you're out in the natural environment, you start looking for ways to replicate it. For example, if I was working with a model or an animal, even a subject outdoors, I'd be looking to try and line them up so the sun's behind them to give them that lovely rim light to start with. And then hopefully there's some bounce light. The classic way is off clouds, but you might bounce it off a rock wall or whatever you've got available to give you a bit of fill in the front if you're not going for a silhouette sort of look. So you start recognizing these classic lighting setups in the natural environment and maneuvering yourself to get them. So it is worth knowing about studio setups and classic studio lighting. And that's my message for today. So thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you next time.